Pandemic side effects. Is self-shame or shame of others ever beneficial? Hi, I'm Dr. KP McKee, founder and executive director of a Spacious Place, and this is
Dr. Ariel McKee. I read and write things. And I work with a Spacious Place.
Yes, you're our secretary.
Yeah.
We are going to be looking at shame today, and it is a painful topic for me because personally I am very sensitive to being shamed and also fearful of shaming somebody else. So we hope that we will hear from you. We'd like to hear your perspective on it. If you have any questions or comments, you can enter it into the question or comment box on your mobile device or on your computer. So let's just begin by looking at what are we talking about when we say shame.
The definition on dictionary.com of shame is a painful feeling arising from the consciousness of something dishonorable, improper, ridiculous, etc., done by oneself or another. And I similarly really struggle with constantly feeling shame or telling myself I need to be ashamed of things.
And our current situation has given rise to more shaming behaviors than perhaps we're accustomed to. And you were going to talk about an example?
Yeah, for instance, I have seen people be shamed for not wearing masks, but I have also experienced shame for wearing a mask in an area where it was considered, I guess, overreacting.
Good word. So, is shaming always destructive? Can it ever be beneficial? So we have a couple of flow charts that we developed as a way to visualize shaming both of ourselves and potentially shaming other people, and how we can make some decisions about what would be the best loving, compassionate choice about that. And of course, because it's something that we have written down and made a flow chart of, it looks very cut and dried, but we know it isn't. So we're hoping that this visual will help with the thinking process, but we also hope that this is the beginning of a dialogue, because we're not going to think of everything, and we would love to hear what you think. So to begin, Ariel's going to share a story about a Supreme Court justice.
Yes. So Sonia Sotomayor talks in her interview with Trevor Noah when she was on The Daily Show back when we could, be in person. And maybe we can put the link to that in the description if you watch this on YouTube. And she talks about needing to go to the bathroom to give herself her insulin injection for life-saving diabetic reasons, and having a woman see her, and then as she was leaving the restaurant, audibly tell the woman's friend that Sonia Sotomayor was a drug addict, and Justice Sotomayor said her immediate reaction was to feel shame herself. And we were watching this and just thinking that would be my immediate reaction too, but there is nothing to feel shame about. So what can we do when we feel self-shame to figure out if it is something that we should be ashamed of, or if someone is putting something on us? Which I believe leads to chart number 1.
Yes, it does. All right. Can we see this if we hold it like this? It up. All right. Then I can't see what I'm doing. Yeah. Oh, that's splendid. All right. So we have two options here on self-shame. And the first one we're going to explore first, which makes sense.
Initially.
Yes, yes. So is my shame action or attitude related? If the answer is yes, then what changes can I take to move toward the person I hope to be? And then we turn that new attitude into an action. Then we follow that by committing to the new attitude or action for the future, and knowing that we're going to make mistakes, and that we commit to learn from the mistakes we make. And that's one of the issues with shame, is that we tend to, once we feel ashamed, just want to shut down, back off, and not try anymore. But if we can get ourselves to learn from our shame that, okay, I have learned, now I want to adopt this new behavior and this new attitude, then it can actually be beneficial to us. And then the last one is to mindfully replace shaming thoughts with encouraging ones, perhaps a mantra. For me, whenever those thoughts intrude, I practice a breath prayer, and when I breathe in, I say, all in God, and when I exhale, God in all. Did you want to add anything to that?
I am a work in progress. I don't have a mantra yet. I think also it's helpful to check in with people who know you if you have a tendency to kind of shame spiral, because it's very easy to find things that you should be ashamed of or to make them up. But sometimes if you aren't able to do this on your own, you can have someone you check in with who walks you through this.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. All right. So let's imagine that this is not what is causing our shame. So let's look over here and look at this. Is my shame the package I arrived in? And this could be related to our birthplace, our age, race, gender identity, sexual orientation, mental, physical differences, or emotional and social differences, much like Sonia Sotomayor was talking about with her diabetes. And if that's so, then let's acknowledge the differences that we have and affirm ourselves as powerful, beautiful, and loved just as we are. And for some guys, the idea of being beautiful may not be the word that initially springs to mind. But it is important for us to recognize that we are all loved because of the uniqueness of who we are, and that we have something to offer the world and other people that no one else has to offer. And I personally think beautiful is a great word to describe that. You can choose another word. Yes, that's right. Or choose another word if that would feel better, like a better fit. And then we move from there right down to here where we were before, where we mindfully replace shaming thoughts with encouraging ones. For instance, a mantra if you have it. So that is self-shame.
And we will post a copy of this so they can see it better, because it's hard to see on the screen. So.
Yeah, we certainly will. And then let's look at shaming of others. And I forgot to look at that. Okay. So we have two examples from literature and history to give us an example of times when shaming actually was beneficial. We want to say that for the most part, we think that other avenues for social and heart change are generally best. But these two examples say that there are times when it can prove to be beneficial. So you want to start over here?
Yeah. So our first example was from Jane Austen's novel Emma. And in the novel, Emma is getting very interested in being witty and having the approval of someone else that she thinks is witty, but who is often very mean. And so she says something very mean to someone who has less social power than her in front of a large group of people for absolutely no productive reason. And then after that, her family friend, Mr. Knightley, who has grown up with her and knows what she's capable of, talks to her and says, "That was badly done, Emma." And she feels shame, but it's shame that makes her, calls her to be a better person and to be better to other people.
And the example from Scripture is of the time when King David saw Bathsheba and thought, oh, I want this woman. And even though she was married, he took her into his bed and had sexual relations with her. And then she became pregnant, and he wanted to get rid of her husband, and did so by moving her husband up to the front lines in the battle and basically having him assassinated so that he could then marry Bathsheba. And the prophet Nathan came to him and said, told him a story about someone who had taken the lambs from another person who had a far smaller flock than did this person, and asking David how this person should be punished. And King David was saying, take him out. And Nathan looked at him and said, "You are the man." So, and that led to David making better decisions and living into the person he was capable of being rather than what he had chosen to be. So let's look at this chart together, and again, we will show you one. We'll take some pictures of this so you can see it closer. This one's a little bit more involved. So we have three things to consider when we're looking at the potential for shaming other people. And those are, first of all, is the person in a position of power? Second, does the behavior require immediate change? Third, is the behavior endangering lives? And there may be others that you think of that we have not thought of. So let's go back to, is the person in a position of power? Because this is a tricky one. So if the answer is yes, the next thing we need to ask is, do I have power over that person? Because if the answer to that question is yes, we are not shaming that person for the good of that person. We are being bullies. And there are lots of instances where we can look at bullying, and it's not just on the playground at school. What are some other times that we might?
Definitely with social media, aside from bullying.
Yeah.
If you are perhaps in a position of power and using the internet to attack people that you are supposed to be leading, that would probably be bullying.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. All right. If the answer to that question is no, if you do not have power over that person, then that's going to take you up to this consideration, which is changing the behavior more necessary than or would contribute to systemic change, more necessary than changing hearts and attitudes? Do you want to speak a little to that?
Yeah, so this would in some ways be the reverse of the other example, where if you have someone who is in a position of power over you and they are doing something that is harming or that is contributing to systems that are oppressive and destructive, then that would be a situation in which it is possible to consider saying, why are you not ashamed of this thing that you are doing? And some people are impervious to shame, so that is also a thing to know. But speaking up to power in order to encourage systemic change can involve saying this is something that should invoke shame and better action in the future. Does that make sense?
Yes. And for the folks who are not capable, it seems, of feeling internal shame, the shame of being publicly recognized often will change the behavior, whether it changes the attitude or not. And sometimes that's the best that we can do.
Yes. Insert Game of Thrones shame gif here. I don't know a whole lot about the context of that. Maybe not. I don't know.
I know nothing about that, so yeah, you're ahead of me. And then if that is, the answer to that is yes, then you can prayerfully consider possibly shaming the person. But I do think it's important to let whatever your highest good and what your greatest allegiance is guide that, because it is a very serious thing. If the answer is no, then we're going to go down here, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, because that's where I want us to put our strongest focus. So let's move over to this middle one. Does the behavior require immediate change? If no, we're going to go down here to this bottom one that we'll talk about in a minute. And if yes, then we look again at this. Is changing the behavior more necessary than or would contribute to systemic change more necessary than changing hearts and attitudes? And then we go through that again. Last, is the behavior endangering lives? If no, then again, we go down here to this bottom one, and we'll talk about that in a moment. If yes, again, we run through this middle section Is changing the behavior more necessary than or would contribute to systemic change more necessary than changing hearts and attitudes? Because oftentimes shaming only changes behavior. It does not make systemic change, and it does not change hearts and minds. So that's the reason these things need to be considered. All right, last one, and we're going to take turns talking about this. If we can say no to any of these, and we have done the lines in different colors here to make it a little bit clearer, then we have 4 options for systemic change that we would like to talk about a little here. We're going to take some turns with that. And the first one is communicate. And that means that we talk with people. We don't talk at them, but it is a dialogue. It's not a lecture. And we recognize that we can do a lot of good one-on-one by caring for each person we interact with, for recognizing that it's important to love others as ourselves, not more than ourselves and not less than ourselves. All right, and then we're to educate for the professor.
Oh dear. Next, educate. And this can often start with educating yourself. So if there's something that you feel like you want to speak on, but you don't feel prepared to talk about it in all of its complexities, there are always people who are providing really thoughtful resources, whether it be books, pieces on Medium. There are even some really amazing people who are putting things on platforms like Twitter and Instagram that talk you through thinking. Sometimes there's also a lot of nastiness on social media, so a thing to know. But preparing yourself and educating yourself can then help you have those conversations, and it can help you educate others. And one of the important things to know is that sometimes you and or the other person may get upset, and it's okay to take breaks and then do more educating later with compassion.
Thank you. And then act, and that action includes prayer, because prayer is a powerful action for good. It also includes any kind of social action that you want to take for change that is needed, including creating something that is an expression of the truth that you hope for the world to find and live into. And I have just been so impressed by some of the art that I have seen out and around in the Austin area, and I would love to see more of that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was
That's
just
okay.
thinking, we've been talking with our kids about how public art can be a way to share something with the community that can be encouraging, educating, communicating, and it can be an action.
Yeah. I just love the fact that in Italy, people were on their balconies singing together. That's just such a powerful good. And just a reminder, we have our prayer wall on our website, www.aspaciousplace.com. On the right-hand side, if you go down, you can click on that link, and it will take you to the prayer wall, and you can enter a prayer anonymously if you wish, or you can give it your name, and if you enter that, then we will check it daily, and we will pray alongside of you, because that's one way we can come together. Shaming tends to draw us apart, and praying can bring us together. Last one, it's modeling.
And it's interesting to me how all of these can kind of interweave, but our final one is modeling, where you can show what you want other people to be, give them a model with your actions, with your speech, and with the way you live your life of change, of behaviors that are more positive, more compassionate, and also caring for yourself. If someone tries to shame you, like at a restaurant for doing a life-saving thing, you can model care for yourself, since that person did not care for you, and they should have.
And didn't you say that someone had said that self-care, when you are being shamed, is an act of...
When you are a person who is treated as less than by society, just caring for yourself, I believe it's Audre Lorde, is a act of resistance. It's a political act. So sometimes you need to take care of yourself.
That's a powerful thought. These are hard times, and they have the potential to stress us to the point where we lose our capacity for compassion. And we had a compassion fatigue earlier on, and I would encourage you to look at that if that's what you're feeling. But they also have the potential for us to grow, and for our souls to gain muscle that is needed. And we hope that this time will be that for you. And we would love to hear your thoughts about it. If you liked it, please do like it on Facebook. You can also rewatch it on Facebook, on YouTube, or on our website, www.aspaciousplace.com. And we'll be back next week with another session on pandemic side effects. And just a reminder that we have our online camp that you can also see on our website, and you can sign your student up for that, ages first grade finished and above. Let's close with prayer. Give us strength, God, to know our worth and the equal worth of others. Keep our minds sharp and creative so that we can find ways to change what is not loving or respectful in ourselves and in the systems of our culture. Amen.